Okay, let's just jump right into this explainer. You know that feeling, right? That uncomfortable, kind of nagging sensation that you're just reading off a script? A script written by society, or your parents, or your friends. Deep down, there's this quiet little voice screaming that things are just a bit off. Seriously, have you ever felt like you're living a life that isn't really yours? Well, the legendary psychoanalyst Carl Jung, he believed this isn't just some random coincidence. No way. It's actually a symptom of a massive, deep-rooted problem that, honestly, most of us just don't have the guts to face. We literally go through our whole lives without ever meeting our real selves, settling for these totally manufactured identities instead. And it's so easy to fall into this trap. You wake up, put on your office face, do the daily grind, and cruise along on pure autopilot. You act like everything's perfectly fine. But then, the silence hits. The noise of the day fades away, and suddenly that heavy, uncomfortable question creeps in. Who am I, actually? So, let's peel back layer 1, the persona, your social mask. To figure out who we really are, we've got to look at the disguise we throw on just to survive everyday life. Jung called this the persona. It literally translates to the masks worn by ancient theater actors. I mean, since we were kids, we're taught to fit in, right? Hide the weaknesses, put on that super cheerful customer service voice, smile when you definitely don't want to. Without even realizing it, we accidentally build this entirely separate identity. And look, the persona isn't inherently bad. We absolutely need it to function in society. But it's basically just a mirror reflecting what the world expects, not who we actually are. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. While the persona helps you fit in, over-identifying with it is super dangerous. If you spend your days acting just to avoid judgment or forcing a smile when you're literally dying to scream inside, you're basically just playing a character. You start drifting further and further from your actual core. And that right there, that's what creates that weird, unexplainable emptiness. Because sure, your mask might get you a bunch of compliments, but it leaves your soul completely starved. Which brings us nicely to layer 2, the shadow, your hidden side.
Okay, so if the persona isn't the real you, who is? Well, we have to flip the coin over. On one side, we've got the persona, the shiny stuff we show off to avoid being rejected. On the flip side is the shadow, everything we actively hide just to be accepted. And a massive fundamental truth in Jungian psychology is that repressing stuff, it doesn't make it magically disappear. It just sinks deep down into your unconscious, getting stronger and quietly pulling the strings on your choices and your fears.
It's kind of wild to think about, but the shadow is basically a storage unit for everything you've shoved away. Taboo desires, bottled up anger, past traumas, basically anything society said was unacceptable. Think back to when you were a kid. Maybe you were super sensitive, but people told you to toughen up, so you buried it. Or you wanted to scream, but were told to be polite. Those buried feelings don't just vanish. Eventually, they burst out as this sudden, totally out-of-nowhere anger or envy or completely random self-sabotage. But wait, here's the really mind-blowing part. The shadow isn't just your inner villain. Actually, scratch that. It holds some of your absolute best qualities. Your raw creativity, that intense childlike curiosity, your deepest sensitivities. At some point in your life, someone told you those traits were too much, so you hid them. But you literally cannot become a whole, fulfilled person until you stop running from these parts and actually invite them back in.
All right, moving right along to layer 3, archetypes of the unconscious.
So if we dive past our own personal baggage, we hit this crazy invisible layer. Jung realized that humans aren't just born as blank slates. We actually inherit these universal mental structures from what he called the collective unconscious. Think of it like a shared human hard drive. He called these patterns archetypes. They're these primal blueprints that influence everything: our dreams, our gut instincts, the choices we make, and even why we instantly love certain movies or stories over others. Let's look at a few of these heavy hitters and the roles they play. You've got the hero, always facing challenges head-on. But if that's your only gear, you'll burn out because you can't accept your own weakness. Then there's the caregiver, protecting everyone else, but totally neglecting themselves. The rebel is great at challenging the rules, but can get stuck in endless, exhausting drama. And the wise one? Super introspective, but runs the risk of just thinking all day and never actually doing anything. The real danger is letting just one of these completely run the show. So it's all about balance, right? If you ignore these invisible forces, they're going to hijack your life, they'll feed your insecurities, mess with your relationships. But if you can actually spot which archetypes are steering the ship and start balancing them out with the others, that's a real game changer. You finally grab the steering wheel and take back control of your own narrative. Now, what happens if you completely ignore all this? Let's talk about the cost of hiding. Look, turning a blind eye to this stuff doesn't keep you safe. It actually sends you down a really steep, slippery slope. First, you get this fake sense of peace because, hey, you're fitting in. But then comes step 2, unexplained emotional crises. You feel miserable even when life looks picture perfect on paper. You might even get physically sick because your body is literally protesting. Then you start repeating these destructive cycles, sabotaging good relationships or jobs. And finally, you hit rock bottom. This deep, toxic resentment. You're furious, but you don't know why. So you blame the world, trapping yourself in a fragmented, miserable routine.
But don't worry, there is a way out of that mess. Let's get to the core. Individuation.
Jung called this escape route individuation. Basically, it's the lifelong journey of becoming a complete, whole human being. And listen, this isn't some magical weekend retreat where you suddenly become enlightened. No way. It is a daily, sometimes really messy, courageous effort. It's the hard work of blending what you truly want inside with the realities of the outside world. Taking off that heavy mask and finally dragging your shadow out into the light.
And when you finally stop killing yourself to please everyone else, when you accept the good and the dark parts of yourself, the payoff is huge. We're talking about unprecedented personal freedom because you don't have to pretend anymore. Your choices become your own again. Those weird anxieties that have haunted you for years, you suddenly see exactly where they're coming from and you can actually handle them. You stop being a passive product of your environment and you become the absolute author of your own story. There's this absolutely brilliant quote that hits the nail on the head. True freedom lies not in fitting in, but in becoming who we really are. And that, right there, is the whole point of Jung's work. It's about refusing to be a puppet anymore. Honestly, it takes massive courage to drop the illusions that have kept you so safe and cozy, and to admit that maybe, just maybe, you aren't the person you've spent your whole life pretending to be. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a question to chew on. Are you ready to drop the mask? Seriously, take a minute today and look at the script you're living by. How much of it did you actually write? I really encourage you to challenge the stories you've been sold, face down those hidden repressed shadows, and take that first bold step toward living your absolute most authentic life.